Real quick, this had came in my mind a little bit earlier today, but I don't know who need to hear this. I'm just going off the top with it. But for those who seen the Truman Show, Truman being scared of the ocean was strategically induced, so he would never go nowhere. And Truman never knew this, but it took for him to face his fears for him to overcome it, and that changed him. I call that, what Morpheus called the splinter in the mind. That's what it is. Now, I find that being able to identify that splinter in the mind is very important when you're in this program, because that's the key. It's the key. So let me explain a little bit more deeply. Did you know that the worst case scenario, when I mean in this program, your worst case scenario in a moment or situation, whatever it is, did you know that it was strategically induced, that trauma, right? Now, whatever it is, if you be honest with yourself, you'll be able to identify it, right? Now, where it had started was when you was little, you was in a household with your guardians, people you trust. Let's say you dealt with rejection, demoralization, mainly rejection, right? And you grow up wanting to protect yourself. That was your defense mechanism when you was young, not understanding that trauma is being placed on you. So you develop a defense mechanism of trying to avoid rejection before it even happened. Like you imagining the rejection happening and you trying to protect yourself from it being unforeseen. You're scared of it just hitting you like a car, right? So now that I know about your defense mechanism to something that you are not aware of, now I can strategically play around that rejection, where now I can place you in that worst case scenario, right? Every time, and I can edge you going forward, right? By having people reject you and do that. So trauma is something you don't want to see. Now, here's where the power in being able to identify your worst case scenario, right? Now, the fact that you are aware means that preparation is key in this, right? Because if you learned something, right? You read the man, you read the instructions, and you get good at it, good at what you do. And then all of a sudden you just forget and you just mess everything up, right? So it's mainly about remembrance, being in a state of remembrance, right? Now, if you know that your induced trauma was rejection, and you know that you figure out that that is your worst case scenario, you have figured out uh you have figured out a weakness that becomes your strength. Because once you know that you can make something big and you can make something small. So when you expose it, when you expose your inner trauma or weakness that been placed upon you, when you put it in a light, it seems to diminish. You remember how like the vampire, they get in the light and they evaporate? That's kind of how it is. That's how awareness works, right? Because let's look at it like this. When that trauma was placed on you when you was little, it seemed like the end of the world. But now as you got older, you've been pretty much going through it your whole life. That when you identify it, you come to a realization like, oh, is that all they got? Or is that it? You get kind of, you kind of, outgrow, which is that it's not like you simplified the trauma. It's no longer the unknown, a vast world. No, you simplified what that main key that or that main trauma that connects with you. You identify that needle in the haystack, which not only once you heal it and once you identify it and recognize it and being able to put it and look at it, because like I said, trauma is something you don't want to look at, to be able to put the spotlight, the attention, the energy on it, you be able to be like, oh, this is it, right? And now when it happens in your life, your worst circumstances, it no longer exists because you identify. It's like you looking at it. It's like it can only get you when you're not looking at it. Like it moves around and dance around you, and then when you look at it, it just stuck. It just, but it's real. Being able to recognize your worst case scenario, whether it's abandonment, it's rejection. You like, oh, that's what's being dangled in front of me. You like, oh, that's it, just a rejection. I'm like, oh, okay. And then that, rejection, that's your ticket. That's what, the enemy punch in. You like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I'm not gonna allow the rejection. It's like you looking at the person dealing the hand for you. You looking at the person that's picking your cards, like, oh, I see you now. That's you doing that. So once you acknowledge it, you remove that ability to get to extract or sell or get you to do something by identifying, recognizing what it is that is being used, because it is real. You had trauma from something, and once you identify, you like, oh, that's why that's why it's not real rejection. It's just the image of the trauma. It's the image of the trauma, like being played out. It's not like real rejection. Like, people know you had a relationship with them, they just hate you. I know it. No, you know that it's artificial, but it's the image that make it look real when it's played out. So you got to just be able to discern it and know the difference between the two. Just know that the image of the trauma is being played out, not the legitimacy and the morale of it. It's just the image. So recognize that it's the image of the trauma that's being played out. That way you're like, oh, okay, that's it. It's like when if you ever dealt with rejection, right? You don't want to approach, and then you approach, you're like, oh, I got her number or whatever. And then you feel more confident about it because you recognize that the fear that you had was just made up. It wasn't even real. You was just scared of the image of what could happen in that moment, which is your worst case scenario. So, yeah, I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.